a lot of automation tools coupled with AI is making it easy for us to sort of shotgun blast a large group of people. But our belief is that AI is really powerful, but only when it's paired with human judgment along the way.
There's no silver bullet in sales, but on Sales Against the Odds, we're here to give you the best shot at building a sales infrastructure that helps you scale. I'm your host, Lee Brumbaugh. Welcome, everyone. My name is Lee Brumbaugh, CEO of Sales Xceleration and host of Sales Against the Odds. Thank you again for joining us today. I am joined by David Nilssen, who is the CEO of Doxa Talent, which has helped scale companies up their teams by leveraging talent across the world. David has scaled to over 800 employees without an office space. He also helped co-found Guidant Financial, which has helped over 30,000 entrepreneurs secure funding to start a business. David sits on numerous boards and brings a very in-depth knowledge of AI to the perspective as well. David, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me on.
So just to get us started, David, tell us a little bit about the story with Doxa Talent. What inspired you to launch the company? Give us a little background of what you're doing now in the space and kind of how you got started.
Maybe I'll start there. Doxa is a global outsourcing organization. We've got about 1,000 people now between the Philippines, Kenya, Colombia, and Vietnam, and we effectively help domestic organizations, primarily here in the US, to build extensions of their own team, centers of excellence in other places around the world, helping them to reduce their expenses, add some scalability, even improve culture, which we can talk a little bit about later if you'd like to. The founding story is actually kind of interesting, and it's actually connected to Guidant Financial, which you briefly mentioned in the introduction. But I was in the small business financing space for over 20 years. I'm still a shareholder in that business today, but I left the organization to be able to start Doxa. And part of that is because we saw a huge need in the market. Guidant was started out of the Seattle, Washington area, although now it is a fully remote organization as well. And we started leveraging global talent in 2015 as a response to the $15 minimum wage that originated out of that area. In doing that, though, we found a lot of things about the industry that we didn't like. The fact that the industry had really won on the backs of workers for years, paying them low wages, not providing them benefits, not really investing in their careers. And as a result of that, you've got an industry where, yes, you can find cheap labor, but turnover rates are somewhere in the 60% on average, and lots of challenges with that. So we started to make some significant investments at Guidant, which were investing in their learning and development, making sure that we were providing them a fair wage and really embracing them as part of our culture so that they didn't feel like the outsourced team, amongst a lot of other things. And long story short, we saw some significant benefits there. And the next thing I know, I've got people calling me because my board is telling the people that they're advising some of the stuff that we're doing. And we started to sense that there was something there, that there was probably room for a conscious solution to make it to market. And inevitably, when COVID happened, the world got flat and people realized that they could work remotely. We decided to take that opportunity and jump with 2 feet in and productize what we had built at Guidant and make that available to Main Street American small businesses.
And a lot of the business owners who are listening today probably thought about outsourcing to the Philippines, but it's exactly what you said, right? That the retention, I've tried it with clients, the retention can be challenging, ingraining to the culture, those types of things. So how have you, improved the mousetrap? Like what makes Doxa special of retaining talent, embedding into the culture? What's distinctively different there?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of things that I'll just highlight, and there's lots around this, but I think the first starts with our conscious outsourcing model. And so that is starting with the very basic stuff. It's, are we paying them a fair market wage? Are we providing them with upgraded healthcare outside of maybe the socialized medicine that's available to them today? We've become a fully remote environment, which is very unique in the outsourcing space. And my assumption there was, well, our clients are expected to work with these people from a remote experience, right? So we better be best in class in the way that we deal in that environment as well. And what that has actually done is given our team members on average about 3 hours a day back, which is about 30 plus days per year that they're not spending in public transportation, instead, with their families, getting some rest, investing in their hobbies, things of that nature. And then we've got a full learning and development team that's helping to level these people up as they're continuing to work in these different roles. And that's important because I used to say that the outsourcing industry is where careers went to go and die, because they were really just treated as this outsourced entity. And So the second piece of that, though, is making sure that we're training our clients and helping them think about what are the best in-class practices for engaging these workers, making them feel part of the team and helping them understand what their real role is and how it connects to the broader outcome for that particular organization. And then we've made some significant investments in infrastructure. So you will find very few companies who are supporting mid-market organizations or even small businesses that are SOC 2 compliant. In a world like today, where data and security is such a big issue, and companies like us who process lots of types of information, personally identifiable information, we support lots of accountants and CPAs and healthcare companies and things like that. It's really important that the data and security practices are at the highest level, and we've made some significant investments there, which gives us a real advantage. And then the final thing I'll just say is that we've been on the sort of leading edge of AI. We know that that is changing our landscape and the entire talent landscape on a daily basis. And so we've made some significant investments there to make sure that we are staying ahead of the curve versus lagging.
Makes sense. So as you're training, so you're giving people the right offering where they want to stick, you're giving them the training, you're integrating the culture. How do you manage and make sure, how do you have the client relationship side of that? How do you make sure that these people are doing what they're delivering, they're embedding into the culture? Like, how do you make sure that they're delivering?
Yeah, great question. I mean, I think it starts obviously before we even sign an agreement. We're really trying to understand who the client is, what's important to them, what are their values, and ultimately, what are the outcomes that they're looking for from this particular type of work that we would help them with. And then we're actually going out and finding people that are specifically suited to perform that work. Now, a lot of the outsourcing industry does what we call recycle talent, right? So Lee, you had this person, they didn't really work out for you, so I put them on my bench and then I try to redeploy them somewhere else because it's a fast way for me to get a butt in seat and start to build. That's actually not our practice. We go out and individually recruit for every role that we fill to make sure that we're finding someone specifically tailored to suit your needs. And then the final piece of that is that we have a team of professionals internally that work directly with the VIP and another one that works directly with the client. And the VIP is what we call our internal team members that work with our clients. Those team members have a dedicated HR business partner that works with them on a daily basis to make sure that the work that we've been contracted to do is actually getting done. The second piece of that, though, is that we're doing calls with our clients on a regular basis to also sort of reconcile their expectations against the work that's being done so we can continue to improve that over time. So it's a collaboration. These workers, unlike a lot of the outsourcing industry, have a direct relationship with the client too. So they're getting feedback in many different forms. And we just continue to work with the client to make sure that we're getting better over time.
So a lot of our owners, of course, hence the title Sales Against the Odds, are listening from a growth perspective. So we know that the landscaping of sales has shifted, right? It's not just send a bunch of emails, activity, everything from account management to better relationships, expanding within your existing base. So how have some of the roles that you're talking about, how do they impact sales? What are you seeing as far as how you can utilize somebody that is overseas, that's bought in a way that they can meaningfully impact the sales organization engine of the companies you're serving?
Oh man, there's lots of different use cases that we've supported. So I'll just give you a handful. And if you want to go deeper on any of these, I'm happy to do that. But one is just simply outbound outreach through LinkedIn, right? I mean, that's one of the greatest places to connect with people who potentially meet your ICP and start a conversation with them that isn't, just random text or email. We've seen some great success with that with some of our B2C organizations and B2B companies, just reaching out to people that meet their ICP and starting that conversation. Another one is very simple, which is sort of the upper funnel where we're supporting clients in building websites. Now, because of the technology that's available, you can stand up a website in literally a day. So content being created, leveraging a lot of the content you've created historically. You can connect different tools like Claude to Vercel and Resend and lots of different tools that help you for next to nothing stand up a website. We've created lead magnets. In fact, we just created one at Doxa that effectively someone could go to our website now and type in sort of the things that they need done, and it'll actually help suggest to them what that role could look like and the approximate cost and things of that nature. Now I've got an interactive lead magnet versus just gated content sitting behind a PDF. We've got lead enrichment tools that we've helped clients build where, they say, this is what our ICP looks like. Now I've gotten this random inquiry on the web. Now I need to enrich that to make sure that I know who are the key contacts within the organization that play the critical roles that are the buying influences inside of our sales motion. And so, those are some of the examples of ways that we do that. We've even got just SDRs that when leads come in off the site, we'll call down on our clients' potential leads and help them try and engage those into booked calls for their senior closers. So lots of different ways that you can do that though.
So I love the outbound. Let's go to the outbound and the SDR side, right? Because ultimately these people that are doing it have to understand that clients, their hooks, their value proposition, those areas. How do you make sure that when they're embedding to somebody that can follow up on a lead or engage from a LinkedIn perspective to provide value and insight, how do you get them up to speed to understand that company? What's some of the secrets there? Because I think that not only from that, but if you're hiring your SDR, like it also goes to scaling quickly and more efficiently of hiring and onboarding as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, the way that we deal with this is similar to the way that you would deal with it in your own organization. So when we're working with a client, there are certain parts of the onboarding process that we take care of, right? The things that are directly related to the employment side, which is, did they sign the right agreements? Did we get them set up on the right systems? Has their computer been provisioned correctly? Are they aware of the employee handbook? Things of that nature. But then there's the on-the-job training. We actually engage our clients in that because, we're not an expert in every single one of these companies' businesses, and we need to make sure that these people who are full-time and dedicated to that company are actually engaged in learning the same way that you onboard a particular employer in their own business. So the subject matter expertise, doing ride-alongs with other people that are playing in that role today, making sure that, they're going through the same sort of classroom training schedule that you would put anybody through within that organization, and even going as far as the role playing, right? And then on an ongoing basis, we've agreed to the metrics that measure success. And oftentimes the client is actually giving us access to the reports that help us track the daily activity. Sometimes they're managing that directly, but that's all things that we decide, again, prior to signing the agreement to make sure that the relationship is built in a way that works for the client, but also is scalable for us.
You collaborate on the training portion, understanding your company, clear KPIs and metrics that you can maintain, integrating with that sales team, albeit probably even some relationship building on that standpoint. What are some of the areas when you go the other direction where it doesn't work well? What are some of the low-hanging gaps that you typically see of, this person may struggle to be successful because they don't have X or Y?
Yeah, we try to filter for a lot of this in the what I would call the sales and acquisition side of our business, right? Which is, do they have the same sort of values as us? So one of the things that's really important to us is that these people are viewed as an extension of their team, that they're integrated in that they're not just the outsourcing group, that they're looking for cheap labor. If that's the primary driver of this, we're probably not the greatest because we provide a lot of benefits to our team members, right? The second is, do they have a clear job description? Which sounds like table stakes, but you'd be surprised how many companies send us a job description that clearly was not well thought through and where they've tried to stuff the kitchen sink into that. We're now unicorn hunting versus someone specifically tailored to do a role within the organization. The third, and this is probably the one that's the most complex to work through, is a lot of companies that come to us are fully centralized organizations. They all work out of the same office in Dallas, Texas, let's say. And they come to us and say, well, we'd like to build a remote team, but they don't have any management expertise in managing remote professionals. They're still working in that model of managed by site versus managed by objective. And it's time for dollars versus dollars for outcomes, right? And so there's some of those nuances that are really challenging for them to work in. And the other one that I would say is that sometimes people come to us and they'll say, hey, I just want to start with one person. And I always encourage people to start with 3 to 5. And the reason I do that is because if you invest in one person, it will become a tax on your time. It's not a large enough investment that you're actually making a strategic bet in a new capability. And because of that, it ends up actually creating a tax on the hiring manager's time. And inevitably, I've seen those fizzle out more than when somebody says, no, look, this is a capability that we have to develop to stay competitive in the future. We need to make an explicit investment now. Those people tend to do much better.
And I will say, we work in the SMB space, so typically it's like, well, we can afford the one. We budget to the one. But you're right. Then the owner's involved with the process of onboarding. Everybody from operations, you got to meet the whole team. Like, it is a very inefficient way to do it. If you're getting 3 people up to speed, that doesn't make a lot of sense from a efficiency standpoint.
I'll give an example. So, look, we don't hide our net revenue retention numbers, right? And this is for those of your listeners that aren't familiar with net revenue retention, this is one of the greatest leading indicators for SaaS companies on whether or not they're considered to be doing well. And it's, for every dollar that you spent with me as a customer last year, how many dollars did you spend with me this year? And that sort of helped me understand, right? So if I have 100% net revenue retention, it just means I'm flat, right? You spent $1 with me last year, I retained 100%, you spent $1 with me this year. For our clients who have 10 or more people in that they've subscribed to from our organization, They grow on average last year at 115%. So we saw 15% natural growth just with those existing clients who had 10% or more. And that's because they've invested in this capability and they see this as a really important component of their growth strategy as an organization. Those who had less than 3 actually shrank with us. There was a 93% new retention, which, of and of itself is not bad, but it definitely shows that when people make an intentional and explicit investment and they invest as if it is a strategy that they have to succeed in versus let's try one and we'll see if it works, it's a very different posture that you go into that relationship with.
Most companies don't have the bandwidth to build a high-functioning sales department to allow them to meet their revenue targets. With Sales Xceleration, they don't have to. Our experienced fractional sales leaders consult and implement your sales strategy, infrastructure, management, and team development. Discover how we deploy these proven sales solutions to address your sales challenges by going to our website and filling out the contact form. We'd love to hear from you. These are areas that we constantly question on in the SMB space, right? It's like we need more top of funnel. We need more leads. We know it's a common problem that people listen to this podcast just for that area. You mentioned obviously SDRs, grabbing website leads and those types of things, but you also mentioned the outbound leads and LinkedIn. And we know that's been, something that's grown in the marketplace, whether it's either taking the CEO's LinkedIn profile and utilizing or doing themselves. There is an art to providing insight or an education or something. LinkedIn was formed to build relationships. We forget that sometimes, that LinkedIn was not built to set meetings. It was form relationships. So how have you seen some of these people you've instilled and put in these positions be good at using LinkedIn to provide insight, education, relationship building from the companies they work with?
I want to double down on this. So LinkedIn was built on this premise of creating a human connection in a digital space. But we both know that it's gotten super noisy. And that's because a lot of automation tools coupled with AI is making it easy for us to sort of shotgun blast a large group of people. But our belief is that AI is really powerful, but only when it's paired with human judgment along the way, right? So while there's lots of tools out there, Phantom Buster, Dripify, who will allow you to sort of automate your LinkedIn outreach, I can tell you right away when I go into my messages on LinkedIn, I can see right away that 99.9% of those were just sent as an automated message. It has nothing unique about me or anything that is sort of relationship oriented. It's just, here's what I have to offer or some silly question to try and engage. So what we're training our people on is first, to develop a relationship, you also have to sort of provide a bid, right? So they're going in and actually making some comments on these particular profiles. They're reading through some of the content that they produced and trying to acknowledge something that's interesting but relevant to the conversation they're trying to engage in. And we do use AI, there's no question about that, but the AI is there as a way to sort of help frame it in a more clear and succinct way, but ultimately the individual needs to actually read through that. And so we've had a much greater success because we have a human in the loop strategy. So it's AI plus machine, not just AI itself. And I think it makes a big difference.
Utilizing the resources. I think what we're trying to say, whether it's a salesperson or SDR, whatever method you're going, we want to understand the customers better. We want to understand their customer journey so that when we do engage with the customer, it's relevant. We step back, I don't look at sales 10, 15 years ago, and we were just guessing, right? We have this need. We provide these services, features, and benefits. Do you have that need? Now we should be able to understand the insights of where our customers are at and meet them halfway so that we're engaging them in a more meaningful way. That's where I think AI, the human connection, can really be gold, but it's getting missed. Like you said, that noise, it's going the other direction. It's getting noisier and noisier. So when you make a difference there, I think it is impactful. It's well put.
Yeah, no question about it. I think that's one of the big things that people miss today when it comes to their AI strategy is that there seems to be two extremes. I don't really like AI because it's not personal, or I love AI and I use it for absolutely everything. And in fact, I don't actually review what goes out in my own name or on behalf of our organization. And I think there's real risk in both of those things. There's a lot of AI slop out there is what I call that, where it's just fully automated. You can tell there's just no perspective. It doesn't have that sort of human connection. I think we got to be able to blend the two in order for it to really work for us.
We've talked about this, but I know you've sat on boards. You've been involved in AI projects at a very high level. We've talked about what AI can do from a preparation standpoint, education standpoint. Where else are you finding, as you look at evaluating talent, finding good talent, where else are you finding that AI is fitting within your businesses?
AI is really part of every aspect of our business. I mean, even on the recruiting front, we might process, 5 to 7,000 job applications in a given month. And unless we had a legion of sourcers out there, AI is really what we use to help us, make sure that we're filtering down based on the job requirements we have and the resumes that are being presented. And so that's a great example of one of the use cases. AI plays a huge role in our sourcing efforts. It also plays a great role in our data and analytics and in some of our finance work that we do to make sure that it can process unstructured data so much faster than any human being can. And as long as, we're making sure that the results are passing the sniff test, it can be extremely helpful within the organization. From a marketing perspective, we use it to optimize our site. In fact, we had our team put up a website. We're doing a handful of AIs in outsourcing events across 6 different cities in July. And we put up a website in a very short period of time. It was secured and SEO optimized based on some of the work that we were doing inside of AI. That would have taken days, if not weeks, had I used an individual to produce that. But instead, we had a simple AI engineer internally that put that together. This is someone that's got like 1 or 2 years of experience, but they've been trained in a lot of the most modern technology so they can move at such a faster clip than an engineer that's been doing this for 10 plus years. So, I mean, there was a long way of saying every part of our organization now is embracing AI as a part of our strategy.
When you're looking at the clients you're serving, where are you seeing them adapt more quickly? And where do you think the SMB community is still behind from an AI utilization standpoint?
Well, I would actually say it's more likely the latter than the first. I think, unfortunately, organizations are getting busier and busier because they're layering on a bunch of different tools, but that activity doesn't necessarily translate into a strategy. And so this is some of the work that I'm doing right now with the AI Officer Institute, is trying to help people zoom out and say, hey, look, how are we going to use AI as a strategy before we start choosing the tools? Because at the end of the day, AI, while it's very exciting, a lot of the basic blocking and tackling that has been true about business since, the very, very beginning, right? Do you have great workflows? Do you have great data? And then you think about what technology is going to help sort of accelerate that. But if you've got bad systems and bad data, guess what? The AI is just going to make that worse. It just amplifies that. And so we're spending a lot of time trying to help invest in leaders, because I think leading AI is very different than just leading people. And we've all been trained to manage people, but now we're looking at managing, effectively agents and people simultaneously. And then thinking about, is the business ready to scale leveraging AI, or do we need to go back and rethink some of those process and systems before implementing too quickly?
We're in the same vein. We introduced the AI readiness package for sales because we had all these productivity partners. We do, with 200 plus advisors, we vet them very seriously before they come into the community. And so for us, what we're finding is organizations were just taking the tools, and you've got 5 or 6 tools. The sales team's frustrated because they don't know which tools to use. There's no synergy amongst it. It's not feeding your CRM. So rather than just start introducing the tools, we said, take this, 40 to 50 questions that spits out of, do you have a coaching issue? Do you have a lead generation top of the funnel issue? And which are the priorities, and how does that fit into your overall strategy? And which are the partners that will help you kind of get there? So for us, it's like, it doesn't matter which partner we choose. We're just trying to point out in your sales organization where your biggest gaps. If you don't start there, we found it was problematic. So
no question about that. I agree wholeheartedly that that's the case. And I think the other thing too is that we also have to think about where AI lives, because there's a difference between testing and iterating, right? We should encourage that within the organization. We want people to have an AI first mindset. But when we strike gold, when we realize there's a real specific use case here, then the question is, how do we bring that into the enterprise level controls? Do you have good governance and oversight and data structure and things like that? And I think that's where small business and even the mid-market is really struggling right now, because they're trying to move quickly to the tools, but they're finding themselves busier. But now they end up with even more unstructured data and lack of consistency in terms of workflows and implementation that creates more tech debt long term. So there's a lot that needs to be done in the short term to help companies get caught up and actually ahead of the curve when it comes to AI adoption.
Yeah, and honestly, what can you do with it too? Like, so much of where sales have gone is land and expand, right? So if you have for example, scoring system, every company, if you're a SaaS company or if you're a service company, you should understand your existing customer base, where there's expansion opportunities, and really be scoring in real time of what that relationship looks like. Where's the opportunity? And so those are the types of things that you can act upon. It's if you're running data to just run data, that's one thing. If you're running data because, okay, I've now found these are the 12 accounts that we may have some risk in our business, or 12 accounts that we can land and expand with this new offering that fits their needs. Like those are the things you can actually implement change off of. So do you have an overarching strategy of what you can actually do with the data?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
So let's switch gears a little bit on. I want to talk about Guidant, and primarily because your company helps so many organizations with growth and startups. I'd love to hear about kind of that journey and that spectrum, but we're going to have a lot of startup type companies that listen to this podcast. What have you seen? What are the best companies that you've seen are really prepared to need the funds to be able to grow with and execute? So love to see some of your insights from that perspective.
Let me clarify. So Guidant Financial, although we can help provide capital to existing businesses, about 95% of it is for startup companies, like either new businesses, new franchisees, or the acquisition of a business. So it's when the entrepreneur is either physically taking ownership or activating that organization is where the super majority of our work is done. And we are hyper-focused on small business, which I would define as total capital requirements to either start or buy that business are under $1 million. So for that reason, though, the super majority of our work is done across really two primary funding vehicles. And although we have access to some others, there's really two primary ones. And then a third that I would recommend everybody think about, or at least evaluate as part of a funding strategy. So when you're in that small business environment, and about 60% of these are franchisees, so they're brick and mortar mainstream American small businesses. The primary vehicle that we help people with is the ROBS arrangements, or the rollovers for business startups. And that's where people are leveraging their existing retirement assets and making a investment in a business without taking a taxable distribution or incurring a penalty. So for example, if I have $500,000 in an IRA or 401k, I can actually invest all or a portion of that into a small business without taking on debt or having to pay taxes on that. So it's like, just like you bought stock in Microsoft, you send money to Microsoft, in exchange you get to hold shares as collateral for that investment. The same thing is happening here, except for it's in your own privately held enterprise. So that is the main way that we've helped people do that. And over the years, we've helped approximately 35,000 people put about $8 billion into small businesses across the US. We also help to broker SBA loans. So there's lots and lots of lenders across the country. The question is which one's going to be best for that particular business owner, and which banks want to consume the types of loans that this particular individual needs. And that's our job, is to sort of help them work through that and make sure they put their best foot forward when approaching the bank for capital. The third aspect that I think is worth people contemplating, and some are philosophically okay with this, others prefer not to, but home equity lines of credit. A HELOC is one of the cheapest forms of financing out there for people that have great home equity, or willing to use the assets of that home, versus whether they go out and get a loan from a bank or they want to use their own retirement assets or even their own cash. That's another one that I think is definitely worth looking at. It's not one that we actually work with ourselves.
That makes sense. And as you go, there's so many different ways to get your entrepreneurial journey, and it sounds like you're finding the best way to maximize that in a way that serves the client. So it's great.
There's a real gap in terms of access to credit for smaller businesses. And so that's the role that Guidant specifically fills, is making sure that those people that want to either start or buy a small business have the opportunity to do that. And so we put together those services. And then we also provide tax and accounting, 401k administration, and payroll services to many of our clients as well.
So kind of last question here. So as you know, SMB owners, let's say you're a $4 million company. I often ask this question, but you're at $4 million company. You've been stuck at 4 million for the last 3 years. You're looking at that next level. Anything that stands out to you is, how do you get past that ceiling? Anything that you've seen will be just maybe that one insight that would be that next lever for the growth engine?
So the first part is, I would look at the market, right? Is the market large enough to sustain a business that could grow within it, right? And do we have product market fit? Getting to $4 million is great. Very few small businesses get over $1 million, so that's exciting. The question is the market actually ripe for a business to grow significantly within it? If the answer is yes, then I would start to look at internally, do we have the right product set? Do we have the right leadership? Do we have the right strategy? And my guess is that there's a leadership gap there that needs to be filled. And it's probably why organizations like yours are doing so well, right? Because growing a company from 1 million to 5 million takes a certain set of people, and moving from 5 to 10 or 5 to 50 is a dramatically different skill set. And so either they need to invest alongside those leaders or they need to replace them altogether. And unfortunately, the reality is companies outgrow people, but people outgrow companies as well. And so as we move to some of those different layers, I think leadership is probably the first place that I would look. And that is directly tied to your strategy as well, because whatever your strategy is, your leaders are the ones that have to execute against that.
Where I think it's such an exciting world, and I love it, kind of like what you're saying around Doxa too. But from our standpoint, it's not always the fractional sales. Sales is oftentimes where you bridge that next gap. But whether it's fractional marketing, fractional CFO, in today's world, you really can make that next level investment with that resource of that individual that can position you for growth without having to do that $300,000 to $400,000 price tag and really put a lot of strain on your company. So I think it's exciting whether you're using opportunities for like a fractional VP of sales through sales acceleration, looking at a Doxa. Like there's so many ways that you can be creative that can help you grow without having to put on that level of risk that would have been there 15, 20 years ago.
There's a certain scale at which you need that full-time executive in the business. But the reality is, I think people often jump to that too quickly and they end up spending a lot of resources on an individual, but then constrain them from a budgeting standpoint. And so I think what you're saying is exactly right. I think the fractional executive is a really exciting way for people to grow. And I think a lot of people are still unaware of even that possibility.
Well, David, this has been great as always. I appreciate the time. Thank you, everybody, for joining another episode of Sales Against the Odds. Please tune in a couple of weeks where we'll sit down with another thought leader on how to help grow your business. Thanks, everyone. You've been listening to Sales Against the Odds. Be sure to hit that follow button so you never miss an episode. And if you want more resources on scaling sales, check out our website at salesxceleration.com.